Hi, Jane Velez Mitchell from Jane Unchained, and we have an extraordinary guest today, Adam Roberts, the CEO of Born Free USA. And Adam, I understand that you have a new undercover investigation called Victims of Vanity 2 that's just come out. What does it show?
So Born Free USA set out to show 5 years after our first investigation into the seedy underworld of wildlife trapping, what's really happening on public lands and private lands around the United States, in this case specifically in New York and Iowa, with respect to trapping, the use of incredibly cruel steel jaw, leg hold, and conibear traps that are completely unforgiving and barbaric devices to catch wild fur bearers for their fur. And so the investigation we've just launched, all the details of which are on the website at bornfreeusa.org, show how grotesque and how cruel trapping really is in America still to this day.
I have actually attended protests outside events where the fur industry tries to market itself as this new humane fur. You've uncovered the exact opposite. Tell me specifically some of the horrors that you've witnessed.
So what Born Free's investigators found were two things that I think were particularly cruel, particularly worth knowing about in terms of the grotesqueness of the trapping industry. The first is with respect to beavers. What they do is these trappers go out, in this case in New York, and they break apart the beavers' dams, knowing that once that happens, the beavers will return and try and rebuild the dams. And in the place where the dam was, that's now been ripped apart, they put these conibear traps that are metal and that are supposed to slam with bone-crushing force and break the back of the neck of the beaver and cause a quote-unquote instant death. But what our investigators found is that sometimes, of course, these indiscriminate traps misfire. And in one instance, the actual trap slammed shut on the animal's abdomen, which meant that animal would have suffered and drowned rather than having been killed instantly. So with respect to beaver trapping in New York, incredibly cruel, incredibly high amounts of suffering. And then in Iowa, with respect to coyotes, what our investigators found were animals that were caught by their paw with these steel jaw leg hold traps. You know, they step on the pan and the jaws slam shut with bone-crushing force, but then the animal can't move, and they writhe, scared, in pain for hours, trying to break free. And ultimately what we found was the trapper would come up to the coyote, in one instance kicked her really hard on her side so that she would roll over, and then with the cameras off, shot her in the lungs so that the lungs would fill with blood, meaning no blood would get on the fur and sting the fur, and the animal literally suffocated on her own blood. So it's incredibly barbaric what's happening in the wilds of America today.
My little rescue is Foxy. Okay, the animals you're talking about, Adam, are no different than the dogs that we have at home and the other animals that we have, that we cherish, that we love, we take to the vet. Oh, we get upset if anything happens to them whatsoever. And animals just like little Foxy here, like foxes, like beavers, like coyotes, are just brutalized by sadistic practices that should be against the law. What are you doing to make this illegal? Because I understand you have a new bill, and I want to go right to the solution, the Refuge from Cruel Trapping Act. What can we do to pass that, and what would it do?
Yeah, so let me tell you, there are actually 3 federal legislative efforts that Born Free is supporting right now to try and tackle trapping in America. The Refuge from Cruel Trapping Act, sponsored by Senator Cory Booker and Congresswoman Nita Lowey of New Jersey and New York, respectively. And what that bill would simply do is ban the use of these barbaric steel jaw and conibear traps on national wildlife refuges. Fully half of the national wildlife refuge lands in the United States of America allow trapping. And obviously, by definition, when one thinks about a national wildlife refuge, we think of a place where animals and other wildlife can be safe, but that's not the case. So we're looking at one bill to try and stop trapping on national wildlife refuges. But then there are 2 other bills, and all of these bills are on our website, including ways to act. A second bill would stop the actual commercialization of the traps themselves. We shouldn't be allowing the trade for profit in this country of steel-jawed traps and conibear traps. So we want to stop the actual sale of the traps themselves. And then a third bill just introduced actually would prohibit government employees from the Department of Interior and the Department of Agriculture from using these particularly cruel traps on the federal lands that those departments manage. So there are these three different complementary efforts, any one of which would make a huge impact. But if I could, I just want to say one more thing about Foxy, since you brought her into this, and that is we have to remember that this is actually not just a case of what's happening to the coyotes and the beavers and the other wild animals in this country with trapping. It's also people's pets who are at risk. And what our investigators actually found in this investigation was that these traps were not just set far off away from human trails, but they were set right by bridges, so children could be harmed in these traps, and so too could companion animals like your dog or mine. So we have to remember that this is both a public safety issue when we talk about trapping, as well as a wildlife protection issue itself.
I pray that you can get into every member of Congress and show them the video, because I remember once I went in to try to show the horrors of factory farming to a member of Congress, and this doesn't mean anything. Then when I showed the Hallmark Slaughterhouse video, boy, I got his attention. I think that Cory Booker's bill is fantastic. I absolutely think the Department of the Interior and the USDA are often killing machines. The Interior Department is responsible for the roundup of wild horses, which is a horror show. The USDA is basically at the behest of the meat and dairy industry. They like to wipe out all wildlife and keep only animals that they can slaughter for profit. Obviously, we'll mobilize our supporters. Boom, boom, boom. 3 bills. We want co-sponsors.
There's been an amazing firestorm of social media activity that we didn't have before, and that enables people like Cory Booker and Nita Lowey to actually tweet out the links to the investigation to make sure that people are seeing it. I think if anybody can sit and watch a 60-second clip of this tethered, frightened, hurt coyote until that animal is kicked and killed and say we're going to do nothing, then there's nothing I'm ever going to do to change that person's opinion. But anybody, I think, who has any concept of sensitivity, who cares about companion animals or wild animals and can watch that footage and then be determined to act, that's the way, as you quite rightly said, that we're going to get some change in this country. So that's why this investigation to me is so important. It gives us a way to put a literal face to the issues that we've been talking about and hopefully encourage people and inspire people to be so repulsed by what they've seen that they're willing to act to make some changes.
This is intolerable. It must end. Support Born Free USA. Support these 3 pieces of legislation. Contact your senators and members of Congress. Let's make this happen immediately. Thank you so much, Adam. And Born Free USA is an incredible organization. So keep it up.